But listen, you told me I should apologize. So what do you think I should apologize for? And then I'll tell you what I think you should apologize for.
I know what you think I should apologize for. Obviously, there was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like
You did it.
No.
Yes, you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
You
clips.
said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No.
I'll go find
First
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched it.
I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there. And
I don't like what happened. Things just happened. I was a mere observer, much like George Soros, as he was assisting the misappropriation of valuable goods by his Nazi brethren of his Jewish brethren. But it just happened. I don't like what happened to Joe Rogan. I had nothing to do with it. Oh, what's that? You did?
It's absolutely there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Roll it.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh my God. What person? You talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer. Really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now.
This
Chris, you can't apologize for that.
Watch the wordsmithing. It's an amazing thing, because look at Patrick Bet David. But I have not seen the entire debate, and I'd love to, but I haven't had the time. But look at Patrick Bet David. Like,
You weren't being clear that it was this, and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not.
You were talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about this version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was responding to a situation
where we knew nothing, and we were being told what to say and paid a lot to say it, and didn't question because you don't want to piss off your big pharma ads sponsors.
We were told that this is what people were searching out to take, and nobody knew what it was. Look, I'm taking the drug, right?
Did you understand that, by the way? He quickly pivots from what he said that he knows is not true and that nobody's buying. Pivot.
Right now, obviously, I don't think it's all poison. I stopped calling it the horse drug when, and you can not like it,
when
CNN's chief medical officer, who is Sanjay Gupta, said to me, you shouldn't just call it a horse dewormer. There's a whole legitimate aspect of the drug. I wouldn't use it for COVID-19, but it's not just a veterinary grade. So I stopped calling it that.
So okay,
stop calling it that. Any public correction about the statements? I don't know. Maybe he did at some other point during the debate.
I went away.
By the way, I don't know if you guys saw this. One of the best moments during the pandemic was when Dr. Gupta, who was just mentioned, went on Joe Rogan's podcast for all the. I mean,
you got to give Chris Cuomo credit because he is in hostile waters, rightly so, because he did what he did, and he does not yet seem to be apologizing for it. And not like apologizing for the sake of appeasing a social media lynch mob or cancel culture. He actually wronged people. People actually got harmed as a result of the disinformation and misinformation and lies. What do you want, Winston? That Chris Cuomo was spewing. I'll let this play and I'll let Winston out of the room. I don't know why he doesn't want to.
Of CNN, like demonizing Joe Rogan. They send their top doctor out there onto his show. And he goes, he goes, why is everyone on your network saying I'm taking horse dewormer? Ivermectin's not. And Dr. Gupta looked down at his lap and went, yeah, no, they shouldn't.
They shouldn't have said that. Do you remember when I had Dr. Eugene Gu on? I mean, I don't want to make fun of him because I don't know if anything bad has happened to him. Dr. Eugene Gu, the doctor on Twitter whose profile picture was him. He's an Asian man taking a knee, raising his fist for BLM. And he came on the channel and we had a very cordial, respectful discussion where ultimately this mouthpiece for the propaganda had to say, yeah, I don't know why CNN lied about it. Yeah, I don't know why they FDA tweeted that. I don't know why they said, that there were no problems. I don't know why. And still had some form of reliance on the people who had lied to him for the last 2 to 3 years. Dr. Eugene Gu, does anybody in the chat know what has happened to him? Because I haven't seen, I'll just bring him up because I haven't seen him on Twitter in a long time. And he doesn't seem to have posted anything on Twitter in a long time. Oh, hold on. Maybe he did. Maybe no. Hold on. Let's hear. Now the other dog wants to leave the room. I think they hear people eating food outside, and now they want to. So Dr. Eugene Gu, his profile has reappeared. It was blank before. has not. This was his pinned tweet at one point. Hasn't posted anything in a long time. Is this his? Oh, this is Dr. Jen Gunter. This is not the right Eugene Gu. Hold on. Oh my gosh. I have a show. Get out of here. Get out of here. Flipping dogs don't respect what I do. That gotta do a Sunday show. They're just why? So that wasn't it. Hold on. Where is Eugene Gu Twitter? Dr. Eugene Gu. His profile has reappeared. It was blank before. This is interesting. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Don't know what's going on with Dr. Eugene Gu, but that was Chris Cuomo having his buttocks handed to him by Dave Smith. And it was a glorious thing to watch. And it sort of started me on a spiral of anger, rage, resentment, and trauma. I'm joking. It didn't do any of that. But I mean, it caused me to start thinking of the absolute sheer stupidity, insanity of trust the science that we lived through during COVID. And it's a very funny thing because my wife was going through her photo album on her phone. I don't know how she still has pictures on her phone from whatever year it was. Let me pull these up. It was 2020. Because I have to back up and clear space on my phone like every 3 to 6 months. She pulled out a couple of gems that I had sort of forgotten about. Look at this, people. This was back in the day of Trust the Science. I don't know if you can read this. I'm going to just get in here and get real nice and close like. All right, it says, for those of you who can't see, in keeping with the new Quebec government measures that will be in place between December 25, 2020 and January 10, 2021, these products cannot be sold as they are excluded from the list of essential products. We are temporarily discontinuing our, quote, our apologies, end quote, rain check policy. I don't remember what that means. This was back in the day when Trust the Science, the people who lied to us from day one, including the media, were telling us that non-essential stuff, we know you got to get some stuff, people, okay? So we're going to leave essential businesses open, pharmacies, liquor stores in Canada and Montreal, marijuana stores. We're going to leave those open. And we're going to shut down the non-essential. But even within the essential stores, because science, bitches, science, we're going to cordon off the non-essential items because we don't want people showing up for non-essential items in these stores. It'll surely increase the spread of the COVID. And they actually saran wrapped off non-essential items. These are the cards. What I loved at one point, they had actually cordoned off batteries and socks. And in case I haven't shared this with anybody, in case you're new enough to the channel that you haven't heard me talk about this before, I was at Alexis Neon. If anybody knows where that is in Montreal, corner St. Catherine and Atwater. It's Alexis Neon. It's a shopping center, and there's a pharmacy in there, Jean Coutu. And I was there, and there was a homeless person who was clearly not in the best of shape. His shoes were falling off at the heel, and he was trying to buy a pair of socks. This is one of the things that I regret, where I didn't think fast enough on my feet. This was in the time when you could not buy non-essential items from essential stores that were still open. And I'm looking at this. The guy, I think he was Middle Eastern, disheveled, not healthy looking. And I thought for a second, I'm like, is this real? He's actually arguing with the counter girl as to whether or not he can buy a pair of socks. And I'm looking at it, and the reason why I remember him being Middle Eastern looking is because I thought for a second that I was witnessing like Borat's Sacha Baron Cohen doing a new Borat episode. Like it looked like Dave Attell doing a shtick about a man dressed up like a homeless person trying to buy a pair of socks to prove a point. And I was sitting there, I was like, is this for real? Are there cameras around? And before I could even just go up and just steal the effing socks and slap a 20 down on the table, the guy walked off, and I've regretted not responding the way I should have at the time. I don't like Borat anymore. I don't like Sacha Baron Cohen anymore either. And in fact, I went back and rewatched Borat 1. It's not a funny movie. It's actually just mean-spirited, but maybe that's what happens when you get old and cranky. But I remember witnessing that. And this was at a time where they convinced regular people to deny selling a pair of socks in winter to a homeless man because it was non-essential and everyone was just following their orders. So I went back because someone in response, Liz Churchill, in response to those pictures said, remember the time you went and were escorted through a store because you refused to show your papers. And I'm like, do I remember that? Now, I'll get ahead of the curve here. Yes, people, I wore a neoprene face mask with my face imprinted on it. Where is it? It's somewhere in this house. A bunch of crap everywhere. Bunch of crap. I've got that neoprene mask somewhere. I wore the neoprene mask, not because I believed in the science, but call me a sissy, call me whatever you want. I wasn't in it to start getting in fights with people at the front of the stores. I had to get inside and infiltrate. This is at a Walmart on DeCarry, right next to a Tim Hortons, right next to the Babies R Us. Anybody who's from Montreal knows where this is. This is when they implemented the vaccine passport. I think this was in 2021. And I'm like, I know that they can't deny you from essential stores. If you need to go to a pharmacy, watch this.
Starting January 24, due to government mandate, we will ensure that all customers 13 and up are properly vaccinated when entering the store. This mask is on, and I'm not showing proof of vaccine. Where's the pharmacy? I'm not showing my any proof of vaccination. Where's the pharmacy in here?
You're not showing it?
I'm not showing it.
You can't come in.
Okay, but is there a pharmacy in here?
Yeah, there is.
So I'm allowed to go to the pharmacy without showing my vaccine passport. I'd like a Tylenol for the headache that this is all giving me.
Come with me.
Yes, please escort me to the pharmacy.
But just so everybody knows, anybody who knows me, this is me at my most enraged. Like, you get so angry, you scream when you care, and you just abandon. And like I can hear it. This is as enraged as I get. Unless it's not AT&T, Bell Canada. Okay.
How do you feel about what you're doing here?
No comment.
Did you guys try to fight it or argue with the government or no?
We just said no comment.
You're conscious of which minorities this actually affects more than other people, I presume, or no?
No comment.
Doesn't matter. No comment.
The one good thing about that mask is you never had to worry about boogers. You're looking right up my big nostrils. And
You know what? I'll take rubbing alcohol here. This is what I'll take today.
yeah, and he
I don't actually have a headache, so I'm not getting Tylenol.
escorts me out like a criminal.
This is social conditioning. This is how it works.
Well,
Condition people to think that this is normal, and then purport that it's scientific.
I look like Cornelius from Planet of the Apes. I mean, if anybody's seen the movie, like, their masks never move properly with their mouths, and I look like either that or, like, I don't know, something from a horror movie.
Not here.
Okay.
You can go in.
Okay.
All right, we can skip the rest. The guy escorts me out like a common petty criminal. Holy hell! It's a trip down memory lane that I never want to relive, but I will never not willingly relive it to remind me of the absolute insanity. And I'll say for all the mistakes, Viva saved 10,000 people by masking that day. Like, I wore the mask just so you don't get into like fist fights with unhinged people in public spaces. I went into like it was not many people are from Quebec. Like, some people watching this channel who've been here, either for a long time or not, don't know. Quebec, we had curfews for 5.5 months in the first year and another month and a half in the second year. People were unhinged. Like, I'm I don't know, courageous maybe, but I'm not getting punched in the face because some unhinged lunatic thinks I'm going to kill them by not wearing a neoprene mask. Like, forget the science about the M95. That was what you make those stupid wetsuit, not a dry suit, a wetsuit. It was neoprene. Like, it was so stupid, so idiotic. It had no filtration system. It just blew all the air out of the side, but it made people feel good. So I wasn't getting into fights with fellow citizens over that, and I certainly wasn't getting my face or teeth knocked in, because people would have done it in Quebec. They were and continue to be that unhinged. But holy crab apples. So trip down memory lane. I'll give Chris Cuomo very, very big props for doing that hostile debate. I'd like to have an interview with him as well, but not sure that'll happen. But we'll see. Yeah, who knows? But that brought me down memory lane as relates to the people who have lied to us from day one about all of this. And now they expect us to trust that they're telling us the truth on that and other things. And we're seeing what's coming out with Fauci. We're seeing what's coming out with everything, which is a very good segue into the sponsor of today's show, people. Booyakasha, the wellness company. Oh, yes. The WHO's Global Pandemic Treaty has been a topic of conversation. We've talked about it on this channel many, many times. But if the government has a play in this game, which they always will, it will be to inject as many people as they can with whatever they deem necessary this time around. Do you know that they're actually talking about a vaccine? This came from one of my insiders. He sends me information. They're trying to apparently design or research a vaccine to give to animals to prevent them from farting. Sounds cool. Dr. Peter McCullough, who's been the leading charge in this fight, isn't mincing his words when he comes to say what's heading our way. Bird flu is the next disease X, he said in a recent podcast conversation. Dr. McCullough elaborated that not only is the bird flu the next planned pandemic, like what we saw with COVID, but it is confirmed to be a human-manipulated gain-of-function strain of the virus. I think Fauci's testifying tomorrow, right? And to the surprise of absolutely no one, the people who've been lying to you from the beginning. No. The Gates Foundation director is the current director of the USDA Poultry Research Lab in Athens, Georgia, where this manipulated strain originated. You can't even make this stuff up, to quote Mark Robert. What can we do? According to Dr. McCullough and his well-renowned colleagues at the wellness company, now is the time to stockpile medications, which is why I am so grateful that that we can get it in the States. It's not available in Canada. The Contagion Emergency Kit from the wellness company. It's got a bunch of medications, it's prescription, so it's not nothing. You got to fill out a form. It's not available in Canada, but it will get you medications that either might be in short supply or entirely cut off. Or unavailable for other reasons. You know, if a foreign country wants to wage a biological war on a country and happens to have control over manufacturing of a lot of the pharmaceuticals of that company, what could possibly go wrong? This Contagion Kit is the only one of its kind. Prescription kit provides you with carefully selected assortment of effective medications for bird flu, COVID-19, and other respiratory illnesses. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, Z-Pak, Tamiflu, I always get it wrong, people, but it's budesonide, along with a nebulizer, so you can rest easy knowing that you have the critical meds if you ever need them. Avoid the wait times, avoid the costs, and avoid the potential price gouging or just not having it. Get the kit for the cost of a single doctor's visit. You go to twc.health/Viva. Let me make sure that's it. twc.health/ that is it. And you put in the promo code Viva. You'll get 10% off your order and free shipping at checkout. And everybody should have one. It's not available in Canada, so that's it. The link is in the description. Thank you very much. The wellness company, you guys are doing fantastic work. All right. Now, also, warning. I think I accidentally tweeted out, or I tweeted out thinking it was 6:30 Eastern, and it might have been 6:30 that time over in Texas, which is an hour earlier. So Alex Jones might be coming on. He might be able to make it on for 6:30 Eastern, but more likely than not, 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central, 6:30 Texas time, baby. All right. Barnes is in the house, people. For those of you who don't know how this works, I'm Viva Fry, David Fryhate, Montreal litigator, current Florida Rumbler, former Montreal litigator, current Florida Rumbler. We start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Are we live on? We're live on Rumble. Okay, over 12,000 on Rumble. I thought we were at 718 because I still have an old video up. And we are on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We will end on YouTube at some point. Take it on over to Rumble. And then when we're done on Rumble, we go over to Viva Barnes Law for the after party. And Barnes, who I just saw yesterday at Rebel Capitalist Conference, he saw my kid. My kid was wearing a seersucker. Barnes, I'm bringing you in here. What's it? It's called a seersucker?
Yes.
I know we talked about this.
We were wearing, Ethan and I were wearing matching old school Southern outfits. So he looked more adorable than his.
Well, it was a well-fitted three-piece suit. It's a seersucker. It's one word, not a Sears sucker.
That's correct.
Okay. And what does it mean? I think I asked you this once before. Do you remember? I asked what it meant, and I think we had someone from our community tell us what it meant. Yep. Barnes, how goes the battle, sir?
Good. We got an interesting show tonight. We got fewer topics because one topic is going to take up a lot of time, and that's everything related to the Trump verdict. We may have him live a little bit later on in the show.
7:30 just got confirmation. So 7:30 Eastern.
7:30 Eastern. The back half of the show, the one, the only Alex Jones, who it looks like some corrupt bankruptcy officials are trying to shut down. right on the eve of the election. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, of course. We got the Supreme Court issuing a big decision that didn't get a lot of commentary this week because of the Trump case, but it will have impact on the Trump case. And in fact, I would suggest it's a shot across the bow to the Biden administration, to probably what's coming in Missouri v. Biden, and what may be coming for the New York verdict that was discussed. It's the NRA versus New York. And that decision, by the way, was unanimous. Then we got big vaccine mandate win. I think we discussed it briefly before, but people are not fully appreciating how huge this is out of the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. We got the Texas abortion law being upheld at the Texas Supreme Court. We got Pennsylvania being sued by America First Legal, my co-counsel in the case against Red Hat and IBM. In this case, they're suing Pennsylvania because of what they're doing illegally to try to pad the voter rolls up there. We got how the insanity defense works. Folks, if you're going to steal a car and run over a police officer, make sure to be naked and in Chicago when you do it, because then you might get to walk away on insanity charges. And then last but not least, a little response to a lot of things that happened this week. A case you could caption Barnes versus LawTube. I'm going to be breaking down. We may save it just for the after party at Locals, but breaking down all the if the members of LawTube have been going to Barnes Law School, how would they have done on the exam this past week on the constitutional implications of the Nick Rekieta case? Well, unfortunately, most of them would have failed. Now, you could have given a few a gentleman's C, for example, for giving a gentlemanly effort in the case of good logic. But he learns when he first started doing his challenge on the Trump gag order. He thought, this is going to go nowhere. This is a waste of time. This isn't, legally isn't merit. And by the end of it, he's like, I'm going to absolutely win. I'm going to crush, because he was right as he learned about the law. Maybe he could discover the same arch in the case of the constitutional issues involving that. But a lot of the others, Nate the lawyer, big fail. The uncivil law, big fail. Legal mindset, big fail. We got a bunch of folks who are just absolutely failing, tempted by the grift. They're failing the American people. But if they were in Barnes Law School, some of them might have to kick out and never let back in again. That's how bad their arguments and logic has been.
I was doing a test on YouTube, people, with the super chat just for a specific reason. That was not for anything other than that. For anybody to see, I can't. There's something going on in StreamYard where I can't bring up the super chat comments, which is bothering me. Now I see it. What the heck is it's not giving me. They're not saving them, and I wonder. I have to scroll to get them. So I might not be able to highlight all of them because it's not keeping the repertoire that it typically keeps. Okay, so I might have trouble coming back to all of these. Bob Ariane says, Barnes, you have to be one of my favorite humans fighting the good fight. Thank you for all that you do. You do too, Viva. I do it, but not definitely not as good as Barnes.
Somebody put in the Viva Barnes Law.locals.com live chat. They went full, LawTube went full legal. Never go full legal.
Robert, I tell you, I want to I try to avoid it because I don't. I mean, the infighting I don't care for. Yeah. But I'm not going to respond to stupid accusations and stupid allegations. But then after I get blocked,
they're busy libeling us. They created a fake because they're deliberately choosing to engage and entertain and profit from the Rekieta hating trolls. Those people are flooding my chats. They went and created a fake Locals page of me. There's a bunch of people at vivabarneslaw.locals.com that are following it. They don't know it. Locals is trying to fix it in order to get fake statements up about me. They're creating deep fakes about me. They're trying to raid a bunch of, they brigade anybody's chats or comments or anywhere elsewhere. It's generally frankly, you could ask Nick Rekieta. It's a bad idea to entertain these people. For example, the Kiwi Farms crowd, they're busy trying to crowdfund so they can get the body cam footage of his kids and broadcast it to the world. I mean that's just sick, disgusting people. That's who they're dealing with. Well, we'll deal with it with legal mindset. If you come after me and libel me repeatedly, as well as flood my chats and the people that are part of our community with what's known as toxic Twitter, which is what he was doing, then maybe I'll take the time to ask and research why it is you suddenly left the state of Florida and went to Southeast Asia as a single man. And maybe when I do, I'll find that you chose the town in Thailand most infamous for one thing. You know what that thing it's most infamous for? The town Legal Mindset chose to leave Florida to live in Thailand and to legally provide services to other, let's say, similarly situated individuals, is a town world famous for which documentaries have been made for child prostitution. That's where he chose to live. I wonder if that's a coincidence. What motivated that shift? But if these people are going to, do this kind of thing, well, all right, all bets are off. I wouldn't recommend it personally, just as a matter of professional strategy. Some others have they're making just bad arguments. I think most of it's incompetence, but some portion of it is corruption. People trying to grift to get, super chats and get all the social media lynch mob people on their side and all of that. And they're forgetting you can hate, whatever you think about Nick Rekieta. The Constitution is not something that you libel. The Constitution is not something you give people fake news about. I see people in the social media space, the entertainment space that follows a lot of these guys, the Camelots of the world, the umbrella guys of the world, who now think the Fourth Amendment is one of the lowest standards known to man, thanks to the bad law being given out by this LawTube crowd, who are misinforming and miseducating, as they say in parts of Tennessee, folks on this law. And I'll go through a little bit later. I mean, it took me about half an hour on the plane to find a half dozen quotes from Minnesota Supreme Court cases that completely rebut every single lame, dumb argument that they've made over the last week. I mean, they can't even do basic legal research. They can't even do basic legal analysis. It is sad. It is pitiful what LawTube has become. All because they want to grift for the Rekieta hating trolls. So, but I'll go through some of that to remind people how you do Barnes Law School correctly and how not to fail the way, I mean, Nate the lawyer is the lawyer who raised money to sue somebody for calling him a fake lawyer. The guy called him a fake lawyer and he lost the lawsuit. I mean, that's the most embarrassing. You raise money to sue somebody for calling you a fake lawyer and then you lose. I mean, that's just embarrassing. Maybe you shouldn't be laughing about the Constitution then.
Well, I'll clarify this, because this is not so much a dunk on Nate as it is a dunk on the system that screwed Nate, that a lot of people are now effectively, say, done deal.
Say, hey, if a judge said it must be law. If a prosecutor or cop said it must be fact. Well, okay, I guess that must mean you're a fake lawyer then, Nate, because that's what the court said. So you can't assume that everything, as we learned, it will bridge into the Trump case.
Yeah.
Just because the judge says it, don't make it law. Just because the jury says it, doesn't make it truth. Just because a cop or prosecutor said it, doesn't make it fact. Sometimes those are the biggest lying frauds in the entire legal system.
So we're gonna start with Trump, and what we are gonna do is, I guess we're gonna save Alex for the exclusive Rumble side of this. Robert, we're going to start with the conviction. I mean, when did it happen? It happened Thursday.
Well, coincidentally, Biden had scheduled a press conference to discuss the case a week before on that Thursday.
Well,
coincidental, I'm sure.
Well, Robert,
surely a sign of high integrity in our court system.
He could not have known what the jury was going to do, but it does seem, and I'm being sarcastic, it does seem that the jury took 2 days to render their verdict, which is also stunning because they come down unanimous on all counts, although they had to, if they came down to one, come on all. But the news that really slipped under the radar that day was Biden regime quietly or very secretively authorizing Ukraine to use U.S. weapons to strike Russia within Russia. That was a. Yes. We'll just open a parenthesis.
Let's escalate. Let's see how close we can get to World War III, everybody.
That was one of. I mean, they've had so many red lines. I forget what they were. There were tanks that were one of the red lines. A certain type of long-range missile that was one of the red lines. And we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. We did it. We did it. And now they're authorizing
power support and airplane and fighter jets.
So they did in fact do that. I mean, I confirmed it. I confirmed in as much as the media confirmed it very quietly, but everyone was on fire about the verdict. Robert, at the risk of asking the obvious, guilty on all 34 charges, and people take that to mean, oh my goodness, First question, explain it for everybody, because I have trouble, but it's better to hear it from you. How do you get to 34 charges from one, even if assuming it is a scheme? How do you get to 34 independent charges, felony charges, from one overarching criminal scheme? Assuming it was that, which it wasn't, but I'll just, for the sake of question.
By treating every single check and every single bookkeeping entry as a separate crime. It's the kind of scam that our system is too easily susceptible to, because we over criminalize everything. A fellow I shared the stage with some years ago wrote a book called 3 Felonies a Day. And his point was that most Americans commit 3 federal felonies a day without even knowing they do, because of how many insane things they consider criminal behavior and get to label criminal. But so that's how they got to 34. They took each time a check was issued to Cohen, and each time there was any bookkeeping entry in the books as a separate independent crime.
But I guess the obvious question is it legal to do that? Because it does seem like, I just made it as a joke. It's a good thing he didn't pay in like $1,000 checks. Otherwise, he'd have 130 in felony indictments. Is there not a double jeopardy as relates to the charges themselves when they are part and parcel of the alleged overarching scheme?
You could argue that, but the courts have ignored it. The courts allow you to piece and parcel these cases. The courts have just basically been deferential. They've been stooges for the state. They've been deferential to the prosecutorial branch. And to such a degree, they've made up law, and they've eviscerated and butchered our constitutional protection and limitation on the state. And they get neoliberals cheer it because they're liberal authoritarians, but a bunch of conservatives have cheered it over the last 50 years. You got to protect, keep America safe and be secure. And that means we got to butcher the Constitution, Barnes. That's what they've been sadly cheering for so long. And now they get to reap the whirlwind and see the consequence of what that looks like when you give the state this kind of Soviet-style power over an individual.
Now, I put out a video, a vlog earlier, the sort of the pre-stream reminder. I'll give everyone the link. We don't have to go over it entirely, but I refreshed my memory after Matt Taibbi's tweet about the Steele dossier. They charged and convicted Trump of literally and exactly, except they actually committed the act and the intent of what Hillary Clinton did, where they financed the Steele dossier, which was actual election interference because it wasn't even bona fide opposition research, wrote it down as legal payments to conceal the fact that they subsidized it, reacted to it as though they didn't pay their employee to prepare it, leaked it to the FBI, that leaked it to Yahoo News so that they could publish it, so that the FBI could report on the publication to go get a warrant to spy on Carter Page. And they gave her a mere FEC $8,000 violation for Hillary, $115 for the DNC, and everyone went their separate way. I'm not they literally did commit the crime that they accused Trump of having committed.
Oh yeah, it's all examples of confession through projection. And then they've done that with Trump all the way through. Both impeachments were impeachable acts committed by Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. And the same, fixing an election in the second impeachment was done by them at different points, or attempted to be done by them. And the first one, the Ukraine bribery using family and friends, was done by the Biden administration, done by Biden when he was VP and senator, but especially when he was VP, not by Trump. And yet they accused Trump of it. And then here, Hillary was basically illegally funding a foreign agent operation to derail the 2016 election by illicitly getting a FBI criminal investigation based on false claims against her challenger. And she actually paid out those amounts at a reportable time period before the election, unlike Trump. And she disguised it all as legal fees so that nobody knew she was behind it.
And it was paid from campaign funds, which Trump's...
Exactly. It came from actual campaign funds, was for the purposes of influencing the election in ways she didn't want the world to know about, and was disguised as legal fees when it wasn't legal fees. In other words, the money, it didn't go to a lawyer. The money went to a lawyer, but not for the lawyer. And so what they did is they took Hillary Clinton's crime, which, by the way, she committed in New York, and applied it, pretended Trump did it. And what's amazing is I get, now I have all the Trump hating trolls barraging me, of course, in the Twitter feed and elsewhere. And they're like, "Oh, Barnes, you're just making this up, Barnes. He wasn't even charged for anything other than influencing the election, so presidential immunity couldn't even apply." And it's like, you guys don't even know what he was actually charged with, do you? You don't understand that the core crime is alleged that the jury found guilty was for decisions made by a bookkeeper to call a legal invoice paid to a lawyer legal services, because that was the option in the drop-down menu. For example, they presented no accounting expert witness at all, the government, that said that there was a different accounting gap requirement to describe those payments. None. Wait, there is no drop-down menu in QuickBooks that says hush money, that says NDA money, that says Ho tried to extort me option. There's no such option listed there. So, that by itself was preposterous. It literally couldn't be a crime, even if Trump had wanted to commit the crime. The booking legal services as legal services when it comes from a legal invoice, and it's the only option on the menu. And of course, the undisputed, uncontroverted testimony was that bookkeeper made that decision all on her own, that she got no advice, no feedback, no direction from Trump on it ever, and that it was made solely and wholly by her. Nobody changed it after she made it, nor did anyone review it after she made it. So the very first aspect of the crime, there was a requirement to issue a directed verdict based on the facts presented at trial. Then the second issue of the directed verdict was that this entry was made for the purpose of committing another crime. But this was made for the purpose of defrauding the American people and the people of New York. And that the fraud crime alleged was that it was all done to steal an election, to impact and influence an election. The problem is, it couldn't have been. It couldn't have been this is why a directed verdict by law had to be issued. That because no rational jury, no jury at all, could conclude that Trump had committed the crime based on the evidence presented at the trial. Because first, the bookkeeping entry had nothing to do with and was entirely consistent with GAAP principles. The government didn't challenge or contest that at all. Secondly, he couldn't have been trying to have made that bookkeeping entry for the purpose of influencing an election, because the bookkeeping entry was made after the election was over.
Well, let me steelman it, Robert, and you'll tell me if it's not a fair steelman. They'll say, well, they disguised it as that even though he had already been elected and it could no longer influence the election, it could have influenced his ability to remain as president. So they could have impeached him.
Now, what's the problem with that?
Shit, I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. I thought it was a smart question.
It goes exactly to what I started the conversation off with all these fake lawyers on the internet, on Law Twitter, which is about as dumb and incompetent and corrupt as LawTube, saying that that there was no applicability of presidential immunity to the charges. But you just highlighted exactly how the case goes directly to the issue of presidential immunity. Because if it's something he could be impeached for, then it's something he's immune for, under the logic that has been made before the Supreme Court of the United States. That's the point, is that his purpose had to have been to stay president, to be president, to avoid impeachment. And that would mean that it's something that he did as president, which means it's something subject to an immunity challenge. And they don't want it to be the case. They want the crime to have been committed before he was president. So there's no immunity argument, no Article 2 argument, no impeachment clause argument. But they can't because of the timing and when the transaction occurred. The other problem is, the theory is he made a false bookkeeping entry to hide the fact that he previously made a false election report. And he made the false election report in order to influence the 2016 election. The last part is important. That's the ultimate crime that was charged. Some people are getting caught up on the second one. They think, it's all they had to prove was false bookkeeping report to disguise a false election report. But that is not what the allegation is, because they knew they had a problem with trying to bootstrap a federal crime into the issue. This will get into the Vivek's argument about a pardon in a minute. But they actually skipped that at the state level. They knew that there were serious problems with trying to do that. Instead, there was a separate state crime in New York for trying to illegally, by unlawful means, influencing an election. That's the statute that they chose as the second statute that they said he was covering up a crime for. Now, there's issues with what unlawful means they listed, because that gets absolutely insane. You listen to some of the theories on that, and it's just utterly ludicrous. But that's the actual crime was that the problem is the election report concerning the Stormy Daniels payment wasn't due until after the election. So even if they could show proof that there was a false bookkeeping entry, even if they could show Trump was the one who ordered it, even if they could prove that Trump ordered it for the purpose of covering up how he unlawfully influenced the 2016 election by covering up that he had made a hush money payment, the problem is the hush money payment didn't have to be publicly disclosed until after the election anyway. So they by law they could. This was a classic directed verdict case. There was no rational jury could conclude that Trump was guilty based on the evidence the government itself chose to present or failed to present at trial. Now, the other issue is an NDA doesn't have to be disclosed on an election report as anything other than how he chose to disclose it, as the FEC itself concluded. And as the FEC expert that the judge prohibited the jury from hearing from would have testified. And this was the former commissioner of the Federal Election Commission, to explain that this accounting entry, to give expert testimony about accounting, not expert testimony about the law. This is what the judge lied. It was about how do you book this item for a campaign finance report purposes. That's a campaign finance professional who's giving campaign finance expert testimony. And the judge himself admitted this was a matter of fact, because when he came to jury instructions, he falsely told the jury it was factually against Trump. So so all the excuses they have, he was trying to usurp the judge's role in the law. It's just nonsense by the judge's own implicit admission. So at the outset, there is no crime that Trump committed. The unlawful means to influence the election really gets nuts, because the unlawful means is either a false FEC report, which by definition could not have influenced the election under the timing issues, which the jury was denied knowing about, or it was tax evasion. So hold on a second. How could a tax report I don't file until a year and a half after the election possibly impact the election when there was zero testimony at trial that there was anything wrong on his tax returns? Because as Trump told people later, they didn't try that strategy because he didn't even take it as a deduction in the first place. So, I mean, he literally instructed the jury on a crime Trump could not have committed.
Well, and he also instructed the jury, Robert, that if you opt for the second of the three options of the predicate act, the tax fraud, it doesn't even have to result in, this is what he said to the jury, it doesn't need to result in him having paid less in taxes, which I did not. I was like, Russell Lee must have made a typo there, but he didn't. He said to the jury, as far as the tax fraud goes, he doesn't even have to have paid less than what he owed in taxes for that to be part of the crime. I didn't understand that.
It's because it's non-understandable. He deliberate, and not only that, then he tells the jury that the unlawful means is actually violating another crime. It's actually an element of the offense in this instance. But he tells them that they don't have to agree on what crime Trump committed. They don't have to agree unanimously on what crime Trump committed. They don't have to agree beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump even committed it. This is, of course, a complete due process violation and makes the jury instructions invalid under New York law. And we'll get into all the different constitutional issues Trump has on appeal and why it's critical he raised those issues on appeal in that manner, because he needs to get past the appellate division of the Manhattan court and the New York Court of Appeals in Albany, so that he has robust arguments for the Supreme Court of the United States. But just for those folks out there that are confused on the crime, they're confused on the crime because the judge instructed the jury that the unlawful means, which was the core issue in the entire case, in order to commit election fraud, did not have to be decided by the jury unanimously, did not have to be decided by the jury as to even which crime it was, and did not have to be decided by the jury beyond a reasonable doubt. And they were crimes that, as a matter of fact and law, Trump could not have committed.
It is amazing because now that you explain it like this, and now I understand where he says it's either election interference, as that was one of the 3 potential charges. I forget what the third one was, or it's tax fraud, which occurs after the election, so it doesn't need to be election interference. And it could
the election report, the same thing was after the election, so it couldn't have been election interference.
Unreal. Okay.
So it was utterly absurd. It is. I was on with the one and only Tom Woods, the libertarian, fun guy. He and Michael Malice do some fun shows like how do you make a law, and it's kind of a little bit satirical about how the law is really made. But it plays off that stuff you learn in 3rd grade with the public service. And now I don't know if you saw those in Canada.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like how the bill is made, and they got the little the cartoon,
the little bill,
corny
is
music,
up the steps, and you get the little cartoon and all the rest. And then they've done some like realistic versions of how the bill is made. It's funny. You put Malice and Woods together, and they have fun. But I was talking to him I did a special podcast for him on Friday, right before I left for Orlando for the Rebel Capitalist live show, which was a lot of fun. Got to meet up and chat with some really cool folks, including Viva and little Ethan. Was that basically I said, if you took kind of a combination of Soviet show trials and Kafka's book, The Trial, and you put them together for a live Broadway script, you would have the Trump trial in New York. Because it's like, okay, what would happen? What if you gave a jury instruction that said, jury, we've now shown you the man. You now must find the crime. Well, that's literally what happened. He said, there's Trump. Just take a pick and guess which one it was that he maybe committed. And if you combine the Kafka's trial of just absurdity upon absurdity upon absurdity, guilty until proven innocent, all the rest of it, that too was on full display. The problem is they made the same mistake all the fascists made and all the commies made, which is they believe that the American people believe in jury verdicts solely because they are a jury verdict. What they don't understand is Americans have confidence in an outcome when they have confidence in the process that produced that outcome. That the reason why they're called show trials is because in the American public consciousness, they're not real trials. And here, you can tell the liberal left, the lawyer left, is shocked that Americans are responding the way they are. Like them, they already had the editorials ready to go, including at the neocon, Never Trump publications like Washington Examiner, had them ready to go at the New York Times, had them ready to go with their, pontificating on MSNBC and CNN and all the rest, saying, "Oh, this election has changed. We have to, he's now a convicted felon. The jury has spoken." This guy even tried to do this with Robert Kennedy. It's something that was live because the verdict came down right before Kennedy went on. But Mr. Kennedy, you recognize a jury made this determination, right? The Times of London tried the same with Alan Dershowitz. You realize if the jury made this determination, it must be true, right? Like the nitwits at LawTube. Oh, a cop alleged it. It must be true, right? That routine. And as Dershowitz said, as Kennedy said, as anybody with an IQ over 50 said, no. If you had 12 Klansmen convict Martin Luther King in 1963, you wouldn't go, "Oh, the mighty jury has spoken. We must now defer." No. A trial is only as good as the trial is good. The outcome of a trial is only something we can have confidence in to the degree the process by which that trial was conducted, we can have confidence in. Here we have a conflicted prosecutor in violation of Trump's rights, a conflicted judge in violation of Trump's rights, a conflicted jury because they were partisan, they were prejudicial, they admitted so in their own jury answers. They came in wanting to convict the defendant. It was kind of like, by the way, the O.J. Simpson civil jury. Everybody, Barnes, the civil jury did find him guilty later on. They were put on the jury based on whether or not they already had concluded he was guilty before the trial even started because of how the judge handled that case. You are constitutionally entitled under the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution to overrule and overturn any Kafkaesque trial, any show trial. And this Broadway show is not selling with the American people because it shouldn't sell with the American people for the same reason no show trial ever sold with any domestic population, because they can't have confidence in the outcome because they can't have confidence in the process. And we'll get to all of the ways in which, and for those people that wonder, okay, what protects me from a Kafkaesque trial in America? It's the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution.
I was going to say nothing, Robert, but so they're going to, the next step in this process is what month is he coming back for sentencing? July?
Yeah.
And that's
July
a week.
11th, a few days before the Republican National Convention, and a week after July 4th. I thought they were going to be dumb enough to actually put it on like July 5th or something, like right around July 4th.
No, they picked the perfect time, a week before the convention in I think it's in Milwaukee. Robert, the judge in theory,
we might have to go up to Brewtown.
Well, I believe I got my credentials for that event, and it's just a question of whether or not I can make it down.
I got, I lived in Milwaukee for several years. Got a bunch of buddies up there. There's a real cool cigar bar there, Shakers in the South Side. So yeah, I might have to make the rounds of the old Brewtown.
Robert, your what's the word? Your appreciation of fear and danger is far different than mine. I was talking to the cab driver about Milwaukee, and even the cab driver said it's gotten bad.
I even got friends on that side of the aisle in Milwaukee too, so I'll probably be okay.
Okay, so the judge is gonna sentence the week before the RNC convention, give or take. In theory, I mean, some people are saying he's going to lock him up, put him under house arrest, whatever. In theory, I mean, we're not in the realm of theory anymore. We're past Rubicon after Rubicon. Any sentence would be suspended pending appeal, given the nature of the likelihood of the type of penalty versus the time it would take for the appeal. What do you think is going to happen? Are they going to order him on house arrest or order him locked up for a day and not suspend, notwithstanding appeal?
We'll see. The judge's options, the maximum sentence he can issue is 4 years.
Per felony.
I think the way it works is 4 years combined. That often what they do in the sentencing provisions is they cap them. The one way they limit the due process implications of multiple prosecutions for the same basic offense is they usually cap the sentencing. So what I had seen was that 4 years was the effective cap, but you never know for sure. I mean, maybe he could. I suspect under New York law, he's not legally entitled to aggregate the offenses.
I thought I do. Well, I just wanted to make sure because I said 180 years, and I just wanted to make sure. I say it as a joke.
180 years.
Yeah,
but I think under New York law, he's not allowed to.
Oh, not 100. Oh, these mother effers, Robert. It wasn't Trump that said he faces 180 years. It was the media that said it.
Yes.
The claim. I'll go back and find it was the media that said it, not Trump. Okay, I'm sorry because I know that they said it.
As a practical matter, that you can pretty much rule that out. I would say as a practical matter, the realistic range is probation to 4 years in prison. Now, in most sentencing states these days, they follow some version of the federal guidelines. And what I mean by that is they have their own state guidelines, and these state guidelines are meant to standardize sentencing risk, so that you don't get AWOL sentences. You don't get real generous treatment for some, real punitive treatment for others. So someone in Trump's category, this kind of offense, which fundamentally is a misdemeanor, even though they've now elevated it to a felony, for someone who has no criminal record at all, not part of a gang or any ongoing criminal operation at all, is over 70, that a 95% chance that he would get probation. The X factor is with this judge. Will this judge continue his pattern of prejudice and institute an insane sentence? That's possible. Now, and will he revoke bail? Now, I told people, I discussed it with Mark Robert and others, that I believed that even if there was a guilty verdict, Trump would not be immediately remanded and he would continue to be released. That prediction turned out true. In fact, when the judge inquired about it, the government made clear he's not even out on bail and they're not requesting any. So the prosecution doesn't want a prison sentence that's immediately served at all. And because this whole case is about influencing the court of public opinion, and the crazier the case gets, the worse the reaction will be to them in the court of public opinion, not the worse for Trump. And so I still think that's the operating motive here. And as long as that is, you're extraordinarily unlikely that Trump faces any prison sentence. Any prison sentence will be, the Republic reaction will be even massively more against what they're doing to Trump, and even more in Trump's favor. That the more they martyr Trump, the more the public rallies to Trump. And we'll see if they can start to figure that out or not. Now, the other thing he can do is, let's say he issues a sentence. Then the next question is staying or suspending the sentence pending appeal. You can also issue what's called a suspended sentence that's effectively probation. You can say, I sentence you to 4 years in prison, but I suspend the sentence while you serve probation. As long as you serve probation, you'll never have to serve the sentence. So people should know that's the difference between a suspended sentence and suspending the sentence pending appeal. Separate matters legally. But he could also be granted bail pending appeal. And if let's say the judge orders immediate remand, that doesn't normally happen. Normally they give you a right to self-report. And when the sentence is small in a case like this, you get bail pending appeal, or you stay or suspend the sentence pending appeal. If the judge denies it, then Trump can immediately take it to the appellate division of that court. If they deny it, he can then immediately appeal that to the New York Court of Appeals. And if they deny that, New York Court of Appeals is their equivalent of a New York Supreme Court. And if he wins that, then he can take it, because of the very unique federal constitutional issues we're about to get into. He can then take it to the Supreme Court of the United States. So my prediction is Trump doesn't serve any time in jail. Trump doesn't serve any sentence pending the election or pending the appeal. And for the reasons I'll articulate, even if the appellate division of Manhattan corruptly refuses to overturn this verdict, which will be embarrassing and humiliating for that appellate division, and will make them a mockery to the entire world. And then if the New York Court of Appeals does the same thing, a New York Court of Appeals that was willing to overturn Harvey Weinstein's verdict, if they refuse to overturn this joke of a verdict, then I believe that the Supreme Court of the United States will take up the case and will overturn the case for all the reasons I'm about to articulate. Of course, they may issue a decision in the next 30 days that requires this case be thrown out.
Robert, before we get there, let me do a couple things. There's a great meme from our community, which I have to bring up right now because it's fantastic. This is the Robert rant, smoke coming out of his ears. Robert, okay, before you get into it, let me catch up on a lot of super chats and Rumble rants, because if I don't, it'll never happen. Testing answer, blowing names. Okay, choosy heretic. Thank you. Pastor Moyer says, how long do you suppose before lawfare going too far Remembrance Day becomes a national holiday? November 5th, babies. That's when it happens. Not a band account says, will MAGA supporters turn violent if Trump is jailed? I don't think so, but we don't think he's getting jailed either. The only question I'm going to ask you is whether or not you think the judge would impose conditions, travel restrictions, which might impede with his ability. But we'll get there in a second. I know the verdict will be overturned eventually. I'm concerned about how much power Merchan will have over Trump until then. Cheryl Gagey. Mr. Barnes, if I were a deep state lawfare operative, why would I stop attacking Trump, Jones, et al.? Because it's not working? Because it's backfiring? Or that might make you attack even harder and in worse, more insidious manners? The AGs on the right need to prosecute the left, says I'm not your buddy guy. Not nice looking tar, Barnes. Where can I get one? It is a very beautiful tie, and you did it up very well, says M. Diaz. Can Hirobayashi versus the United States apply to MAGA? Barnes, do you know what that is?
Isn't that a Korematsu related case?
I mean,
that's been overturned now by the Supreme Court.
I'll Google that.
Unless it's a different one.
Did Stormy Daniels pay taxes on the hush money she received?
I bet no.
Need a t-shirt, Viva Freedom or Die. No, the reason I thought of that, the channel used to be called Viva Fry, Live Free or Die, but we don't need to have negative connotations in there. So no, but Barnes Army might be a little bit too close to Salty Army, so we want to stay original. Why did I bring this on? I don't know why I brought that one
the
up.
Barnes Brigades, maybe something with alliteration.
Barnes Brigade is good. What is the response time mandated by New York appeals? If the judge does jail him immediately or impose its condition, does that let the appeals court sit on their hands through the RNC?
That's where the quickest way a higher court gets involved is not on the appeal substantively. It's on the motion to suspend the sentence, stay the sentence, or grant bail pending appeal. That's what they have to resolve very quickly and expeditiously if Mershon goes too far.
Okay, now let's I'll get to the Rumble rants in the next Rumble rant break. Robert, what happens now?
So the potentially big intervening event is what the Supreme Court does on the DC case concerning immunity. I think this verdict was one of the worst things that could happen for the people hating on Trump, because it's going to further motivate the Supreme Court to issue as broad and expansive an interpretation of immunity as possible. The three constitutionally conservative jurists, Alito, Gorsuch, Thomas, had already voiced great skepticism about what was happening here and suggesting an expansive interpretation of Article 2 power consistent to it, which, by the way, they're consistent on that in other areas. So the big questions were Kavanaugh and Roberts and Barrett. Barrett was such a wuss that she's unreliable and untrustworthy, unsurprising to some of us.
Let me pause you there just in case anybody's brand new to the channel. Supreme Court is sitting on or preparing to issue the ruling on the immunity question that was brought up in the DC case. And we covered it at length. There's going to be varying scopes of immunity that they might recognize. They might issue something of a test to determine if something was presumptively presidential or not, in which case you might have to go through some sort of an immunity test before even determining jurisdiction over the case. Or they might say, absent impeachment and conviction, there will be no prosecution ever once a president has left office, less likely. So Supreme Court is going to issue that in the coming weeks, maybe in the coming week. The question is whether or not, as a result of this, some of them might go back and revise the scope and extent of their reasons.
Exactly. Like they could come down with, one ruling would say there is no presidential immunity and affirm the DC courts. That would have no impact on the New York case, but I think that's highly unlikely, especially now. They're seeing the political fallout in live time. They're seeing how embarrassing this legal proceeding is. It's no longer a hypothetical. What would happen if you had a crazy prosecutor, a crazy judge, and a corrupt jury fix a case against a former president of the United States who's the leading opponent of the incumbent presidential administration? It's no longer a hypothetical as to what that looks like. We've now seen it. And to give people an example, if there is no presidential immunity, every president could not only be indicted by any prosecutor anywhere in America, but by any prosecutor anywhere in the world. And if that country had an extradition treaty with the United States, what would be the grounds to prohibit extradition? Mm-hmm. If a country in the Middle East decides that President Obama committed mass murder with his drone bombing campaign, what if they indict him? And what if it's one of the countries that has an extradition treaty with the United States? How does the United States refuse to send Obama back for the death penalty execution? A president standing in front of a death penalty squad. Same with George W. Bush. Same with William Jefferson Clinton. So, I mean, how do you avoid that? I mean, now it's no longer hypothetical. We've seen in New York what this looks like. And so I think it puts massive pressure on the Supreme Court to issue an expansive interpretation and reject the no immunity application. Then they've got two options: limited immunity that's very fact contingent, or broad immunity. They're right now under massive pressure to give broad immunity because they can see the only way to really preclude this from reoccurring, from us being a laughingstock of the entire world, us being the country that now, needs bananas to replace stars in our American flag. And by the way, the Banana Republic comes from the US CIA, the Dulles brothers, being involved with the United Fruit Company as their corporate counsel, while also being in the US government and holding shares in the United Fruit Company, overthrowing governments. And because United Fruit Company was a big banana company, that's where they started referring to countries as, quote, banana republics. It's all deep state coup history. That's why it's especially applicable here to the deep state coup effort against President Trump. And for those that don't know, the lead idea prosecutor behind this, who was standing behind Alvin Bragg right after they announced the guilty verdicts, is one of the top highest ranking officials in the Biden administration. he resigned his high-ranking position in the Justice Department to go prosecute this case. So have no illusions. Shannon Bream may be asleep at the wheel and not know the connection between the Biden administration in this case, but anybody that can actually see or read knows the Biden administration connection to this case. So the way they could get rid of all these cases is very simple determination. One that, in my view, has been straightforward from the plain text of the Constitution and the public policy purposes served by that plain text, which is the only place in the Constitution it allows an indictment of a president of the United States is if and when he has been impeached by the House of Representatives and convicted by a 2/3 vote or more in the Senate of the United States on those specific charges. That's the only time it says you can prosecute and indict a president of the United States. So that's what they should say. Until he's impeached and convicted, you can't prosecute him, period. Otherwise, he's subject to and here's how he's subject to ongoing extortion while president. While president, prosecutors could come to him domestically and internationally and say, hey, if you don't give me what I want on this policy, regardless of what the American people want, then I'm going to indict you and put you in prison when you leave office. So you can't have that. But otherwise, Article 2 power, which says all executive power is vested in the president, doesn't mean anything. Same article, different variation of those same Article 2 issues applied in the other cases. So, but let's say they don't go there. If they go there, this case is vacated. Every single criminal act alleged in the indictment happened while he was president of the United States. And for the reasons you just articulated about the only legitimate theory they can have as to the timing problem they have in the case, namely that these acts are taken after the election and that even the underlying acts he's supposedly covering up were not due until after the election, was to avoid impeachment as president of the United States, making them presidential acts. But under a broad Article 2 and impeachment clause interpretation, all that's moot. It's like, look, doesn't matter. You can't charge him with any crime for anything he did while president unless you first convict him by the Senate. That would vacate the entire New York verdict.
And the classic argument to that, and I think they raised it during the immunity argument, is that, well, if you have a corrupt Senate who refuses to convict, then you have a president that's above the law. And I'm like, if you have 66 people who are so corrupt that they refuse to convict, well, I'll take my bet on 66 corrupt people versus one corrupt DA or attorney general after the fact who single-handedly can corrupt the entire process. All right. So you have a Senate, 66 corrupt Senate, you got a problem, but I'll take I'll wager my bets on 66 people versus one Leticia James or one Alvin Bragg, because you only need one corrupt person with limitless power to do it, which is what they're going to give them. Okay. Sorry.
Exactly. So the second option is for them to sort of split the baby and say that, well, a president is immune from criminal prosecution for any presidential act. But for any act taken in his purely private or personal capacity, he's not. What that would require is the court to go through an entire indictment and see which acts are personal, which acts are presidential, and strike all the ones that are presidential from the indictment. Also, when it comes to evidence, exclude any evidence of anything that's presidential. And in terms of instructing the jury, instruct the jury on the difference. Of course, none of that happened in the New York case. The New York case never applied that. Now, and there's a little bit of an issue with Trump's lawyers not easily preserving issues for appeal. Now, I believe he still effectively raised this issue because he raised it when he first removed the case to federal court and said presidential immunity gives him grounds to go to federal court, and the federal court just summarily denied the immunity claim. So in my view, he did preserve it. However, it could have been a lot better preserved. They should have been hammering it over, and this is an argument I make with defense lawyers all the time. Don't let the judge intimidate you. Preserve. Dershowitz has been hammering Trump's lawyers for not preserving. He understands this as an appellate lawyer. That what happens is when you're right in front of the judge, you're discouraged from doing so. Judge's like, oh, you already did that. Why are you doing this? The judge gets annoyed, rules against you on a bunch of things. And so as the defense lawyer, you're inclined not to poke the bear over and over again. But you have to in a case like this. Case like this where, the jury's rigged, prosecution's rigged, witnesses are rigged, the judge is rigged. You've got to preserve every appellate issue over and over and over. You can do it diplomatically. You can do it courteously. with courtesy, but you still got to do it. But I think he still has enough there. So, but even if they make that hybrid ruling, because this judge never even applied that at any level of the case, in my view, it's grounds to immediately go in, overturn the verdict. Judge, you've got to do this standard. We've got to restart from the beginning all over again. And because, again, people haven't looked at this, while they're saying his intent was to cover up a crime that was intended to, in turn, cover up something that happened before the presidency, all the actual acts that are alleged as crimes, the actus reus, and even the mens rea, is while he was president. And that is, as you pointed out earlier, the only way you can even get to any criminal intent is to suggest the bridge being him wanting to avoid impeachment, which makes it presidential acts by definition, in my view. And so so I think either way, I think the likely Supreme Court verdict completely invalidates this verdict.
There is no chance the Supreme Court verdict is going to be anything other than, at worst, some acts are purely personal, others are purely presidential, and you need to make the distinction.
There'll be more immunity than the D.C. Court of Appeals or D.C. trial court granted. I think that's a 90-95% chance. And that means this verdict is tainted just on those grounds, and is the quickest, easiest way for the verdict to get thrown out. Now, if this corrupt trial court refuses to even recognize the Supreme Court ruling, all that does is accelerate the appeal issues where he could get a stay of the sentence pending appeal because of the Supreme Court ruling. And so now that's just those issues. There's every kind of evidence issue. There's every kind of jury instruction issue. There's every kind of jury selection issue. There's a wide range of issues that are unique, and there's evidentiary issues about directed verdict and evidentiary issues about appellate record review, which are unique in New York. Those issues would only be decided by the appellate division in the New York Court of Appeals because they're New York state law specific. The long and short of it is they were denied cross-examination of certain witnesses in violation of New York rules. They were denied the opportunity to present witnesses on their own behalf in violation of New York rules.
The expert denial, I mean, I don't even understand it, especially since the judge referenced FEC law in his jury instructions, which makes absolutely no sense. So there's that. I mean, refusing the admissibility of evidence, I thought, at least under civil Quebec law, was immediately appealable because it changes the outcome. Allowing prejudicial testimony that was irrelevant, i.e. Stormy Daniels, I mean, that you go on and say, okay, well, you can deal with that afterwards, but if we don't allow them to make evidence, that can't be undone. Keep going.
So, I mean, all the Stormy Daniels evidence that was let in that never should have been is itself grounds for reversal under New York rules of evidence. The exclusion of the expert witness about how campaign finance disclosure reports functionally work, that exclusion was by itself grounds to reverse the verdict under the rules of evidence under New York law. The jury instructions misstating the law were grounds to reverse the jury verdict under New York law. The precluding the defense from making certain closing arguments and allowing over objection certain prosecutorial misrepresentations of law and fact in closing arguments is itself reversible error under New York law. Aspects of the way the jury was selected, including allowing people on the jury who admitted a preconceived bias on the case and against the defendant, is a violation of New York law. So you have all of those New York law violations, but those will be specific to, and then you have the directed verdict, as I mentioned at the top of the show, that should have been granted. And in New York, uniquely, they don't have to give a certain deference to the jury. If they think that the evidence was insufficient or insubstantial to convict, they can overturn regardless. It's one of the most jury skeptical appellate standards that exist anywhere in the country. So if the New York Appellate Division is conscientious either about justice or the law, or the New York Court of Appeals is, they will, on New York law grounds, salvage their public reputation by overturning this verdict. But if they don't, that's where the robust federal constitutional issues that President Trump needs to preserve throughout this case going up, needs to highlight throughout, because the Supreme Court of the United States does not have jurisdiction over the New York state law violations that occurred in this case. They do have jurisdiction over any U.S. constitutional right that was violated in this case. And that's being overlooked by a lot of the legal commentary, because what prohibits a Kafkaesque trial in America is the due process clause of the Constitution. So that's what precludes the government from convicting you without telling you what crime it is, which is what happened throughout this case. That's what prohibits the government from hiding discovery from you or producing that discovery on the eve of trial and the court denying you a continuance. It's the due process clause of the Constitution. What prohibits illicit evidence from being presented at the trial, like the Stormy Daniels testimony, or what prohibits the court from excluding you being able to present your own witnesses, like the FEC expert, or prohibit the court from trying to intimidate counsel and witnesses, like the court did with Mr. Costello, is the due process clause of the U.S. Constitution. What prohibits instructing the jury they can find a person guilty without even agreeing what crime they committed, without even agreeing beyond a reasonable doubt, without even agreeing unanimously? All three are separate individual violations of the due process clause of the United States Constitution. And so, and what prohibits the prosecutor from the court from prohibiting the defense from fully presenting closing argument, and prohibits the government from lying about facts and law in closing argument and suborning perjury like they did with Michael Cohen, is again the due process clause of the U.S. Constitution. So all of those New York legal errors are also U.S. constitutional errors. And as such, as long as Trump's counsel adequately preserves and protects those errors, that gives the Supreme Court of the United States jurisdiction to both suspend any sentence pending appeal or grant bail pending appeal, and gives them jurisdiction to reverse substantively and throw out the verdict, independent of the Article 2 impeachment clause issues that are uniquely present here as well. Last but not least, there's clear First Amendment issues. This is a classic case of selective prosecution, of retaliatory prosecution. Not only did Hillary Clinton actually commit this crime in New York and was never even investigated in New York for it, least of all indicted or prosecuted for it, this particular subset of charges has never been charged in the history of New York. Nobody that's in a private business has ever been charged with a crime for how they did their internal bookkeeping meant for themselves.
Defrauded the people, Robert. It defrauded the New York people.
Exactly.
Let me just, I want to
answer
this one. Did Trump declare it as a campaign expense or no? He did not, as far as I understand, right?
I don't know what ultimately happened. To my knowledge, that's correct. He never declared it as a campaign
expense. And never claimed the deduction.
Their argument is that he had to declare it as a campaign expense. So the thing was, but it was a campaign expense only post-election, and it wasn't really a campaign expense. Or if all of this is a campaign expense, then Hillary Clinton clearly committed the crime at scale. And so so he has a classic selective prosecution claim, clearly. And here he is the best selective prosecution claim maybe ever brought. The prosecutor announced during his election, please vote for me and I'll find a way to indict Trump.
Well, he's got that with Leticia James as well. I think, yes. He's got that with Fannie Willis as well. All three of them.
Correct. And you know what that's a natural bridge to, we get up to next, is the Supreme Court just issued a very big decision, 9-0 unanimous, about abuse of government state power in violation of First Amendment rights. And guess which state it concerned? The state of New York.
Well, before we get there, Robert, because I am well behind on the Rumble rants and some of the vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Let me bring these up here because I'm going to blitz through them, people. I apologize. Swallow, deep breath. MDG83. Is it ironic that the term trumped up charges existed before this trial? Yes, it is. Sweaty Zeus. I still think Dave Smith is a punk biatch, I think that means, and got what he deserved last weekend. And honestly, he could have done a way better job. He just let him say all the studies and ivermectin doesn't work over and over again. The engaged Zeus says, God, I wish someone would take Frito fishing again. Sweaty Zeus. The freaking government came out and said ivermectin works in a statement a few months ago. No medical advice. Shofar. Barnes, we appreciate everything you are doing. Please don't underestimate how much we listen to you and David. Thank you both for you do for the information you provide us and what you do. Thank you. Finboy Slick. Who's creating deep fakes about Barnes? I got exclusive rights on that. Finboy Slick is the guy who does the best AI generated images ever in our locals community. The Engaged Few says, hey Barnes, where can I order that magnificent tie Someone does not have the basic rights in the lower courts, says Rustin Hauer. Rustin Hauer then says, how much liability does the lower court get? How much, deference does the lower court get when the appeals process overturns them? Oh, how much liability? Zero. Panther AI or Al. I still laugh at the judge's claim that the former head of the FEC wasn't qualified to discuss how the FEC enforces the laws. The laws it is in charge of enforcing. A joke, a sick, disgusting joke. King of Biltong says, good afternoon from Anton's Meat. Need free shipping for your biltong using code Viva and biltongusa.com. AntonUSA.com. Biltong is perfect for your carnivore, keto, high-protein diet. Biltong, I got the other bag in the fridge that I got to open up soon. It's still good. It's delicious. It's amazing. It's like wet beef jerky. Philip J. Fry. Evening, gents. If Mitch McConnell is known as Murder Turtle, may I suggest War Walrus for John Bolton? I bit my cheek when I was sleeping, and now I have it hurts. Pinochet's helicopter tour says the DOJ in New York and the Democrats have no choice but to seek immediate. I'm not even going to say it out loud because I don't want someone taking it out of context, but I got the joke. Freedom Patriot says, are they smart enough to be conducting this kind of lawfare to force SCOTUS to make broad immunity that saves Biden, Obama in the future? Interesting theory. Bones of Wiskin. Hey, Viva, did you ever study the Tino versus Arnold precedent case? Absolutely not. My cousin was hit by a car while crossing the road to get ice cream truck in the 70s. They sued everybody involved. Screen grabbing because I'm curious now. Fleet Lord Avatar says, can we watch Alex Jones on Locals without being a sub? Yeah, we're not going to leave it. We're not going to have it only for supporters. So members. That means everybody who just, I think you have to give an email. Fix this, guys, says Vjank. I don't know what you're talking about. But what we're going to do right now, we're going to end this on YouTube because we've been here for longer than they deserve. And we're going to take this over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com and Rumble. And AJ is coming on in about 9 or 8 minutes. So how do I do this? I'm ending it on Twitter also. And I hate it because the view count, which says live viewers in StreamYard, says an aggregate of the views on Twitter. So it says 10,000 people watching live. Bullcrap. It's not. I mean, there's 22,000 on Rumble, but there's only 3,000 on YouTube. So get your butts on over to Rumble. Viva Fry on Rumble. Bada bing, bada boom. We're going to end on YouTube now. I'll post all of Alex Jones's interview tomorrow. We're not going to Rumble to circumvent the rules, and we're posting this on YouTube tomorrow. So the rest of the world, the unwoke, the unawakened, can know what the hell is going on. Ending on